and Terminator 2
I will
and turn
be
into
watching,
a giant Antifa rage monster.
If it happens, I will be watching CNN intently, and I never thought I would say that. But how do you see the rest of America responding to this? Because a lot of people are pointing to potentially even a bigger conflict.
Look what they did. Look what they did in January 20th, 2016. 2017.
Yeah, I was
they
there.
went around. We were both there, and they went around burning. They torched that immigrants, that poor working class immigrants limo. He had his own limo. He's a contractor. He would give people rides. They torched it.
That was a very famous sight, as well as the garbage can that was on fire with the rest of the mainstream media around it.
But it's because they're like, limousines are for the rich, and it's like it's some poor guy who leased it to run a business to drive people around. He's not rich. They don't care. So look, man, I'll tell you this: if Trump does find a way to flip this, I'm boarding up my windows, man, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I'm not really going to board up my windows, but
I don't think you need to.
Not out here. But we went to the armory the other day.
Of course.
That was awesome.
Luke and we went there and
that was really fun.
Bought them out.
Yes, it's very important to be able to defend yourself and have the right to defend yourself.
Oh, the armory.
A lot of politicians have a lot of security guards with machine guns and guns around them, and they think that they could afford themselves protection, but you shouldn't have any protection at all, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I think one of the core strengths of the United States that makes it as special as it is right now is the ability of individuals to be able to arm themselves. The Second Amendment is extremely important, and I think we're heading down a very dangerous road, whether Donald Trump wins or whether Biden comes in and then tries to restrict that right, take away the right of individuals to defend themselves.
I think
it's going to be a very big clash point between Americans saying, no, this is absolutely not okay.
We had on Destiny the other night, and I think one of the arguments he brought up is the perfect example of why Joe Biden thinks he's completely justified in stripping away your rights. When Destiny, he's a leftist, mentioned that we need a 2-month hard lockdown and the government should support people, I said, don't people have rights? His response, and this is something I've heard a lot from the left, is, do you have a right to drive your car drunk? And my response is, you don't need to drive your car drunk. You do need to make a living and work a job and run your business and pay your employees. Like, those are things you need to do. Yeah. So that's completely different.
Yeah, that argument is totally irrelevant.
But think about how Democrats, that's how they think. They're like, you can't drive your car drunk. Why would you go outside and get someone else sick? And it's like, because we have to live.
Well, but you need to eat, but you can't steal food if you can't afford it. You don't have the right to steal food if you don't have enough money for it.
Well, what does that have to do with anything?
If you need to eat, but you don't have a right to steal.
But we give people food. We have food banks. We have welfare cards.
Yeah,
not sometimes.
Not
we
always.
literally not like
everyone has access to that stuff.
Well, they do.
Just saying, it's a technicality, but
like you can go to food banks, you can get EBT cards. I think every state has an electronic benefits system. So if you steal food when you can go to the Department of Human Services and we have welfare programs, it's very different from getting drunk and driving your car. Not only that, you know what the penalty is for stealing food? Typically, slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
You know what the penalty is for driving drunk?
Yeah, driving is dangerous.
Yeah, it's a felony. You can't drive anymore. You go to jail. You get an ankle bracelet.
It depends on the state, of course. Some states are more severe than others.
For sure. But there's more here. We got just.
Oh, before we go on, I got evidence about this DNC trying to trash Bernie for being Jewish. Did
really?
You guys? Yeah, it's an email. This is from Politico, from the DNC CFO Brad Marshall, sending it out to a bunch of DNC people. And it said it may.
Well, don't read it. Don't read it verbatim if they're trashing.
No, it's nothing that you can't say online. But it's cruel that they would do this. It may. No difference. It's a typo. But for Kentucky and West Virginia, can we get someone to ask his belief? Does he believe in a God? He had skated on saying he has a Jewish heritage. I think I read he's an atheist. This could make several points difference with my peeps. My Southern Baptist peeps would draw a big difference between a Jew and an atheist. Marshall wrote in a message to several DNC communication directors.
So we have there's a lot to talk about, right? So there's a reason why I highlight Georgia and Trump's attorneys asking Georgia's legislature to overturn the election and select their own electors, because we have this going on right now. Supreme Court again is asked to block Biden in Pennsylvania. Justice Alito has given, let me read it. They say, in a sign that the case, okay, let me stop. This is Act 77. It is the no excuse mail-in voting, the absentee expansion in Pennsylvania. Several Republicans brought the suit to the courts. The lead plaintiff, Mike Kelly, won his election. If they overturn or the judges rule this election was unconstitutional, he causes damage to his own career. That was noted by the judge. They're saying that no excuse mail-in voting is a violation of the Constitution. It was thrown out by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court on narrow grounds that, sorry, you took too long to file. But in the lower court's ruling, they said that these Republicans will likely win on the merits. And what does that mean? I don't know. It could nullify Pennsylvania outright. Well, they've filed to the Supreme Court. And Alito, here's what they say. In a sign that the case is likely too late to affect the election, Justice Samuel Alito ordered the state's lawyers to respond by December 9th, a day after what is known as the safe harbor deadline. That means that Congress cannot challenge any electors named by this date in accordance with state law. State law is irrelevant to the constitutional process. The Constitution says the legislature decides how the elections are run and who the electors are. Internally, the Supreme Court can complain about the legislature, but what the legislature says to the federal government in terms of their electors is an entirely different matter. More importantly, it's really interesting because I'm seeing two messages from the left. They're saying if Alito, Supreme Court justice, has ordered the state to answer by the 9th, that's after the safe harbor provision, meaning they didn't bring the dispute in soon enough. Therefore, the electors are certified. Case closed. Biden wins. But that makes literally no sense. I actually have from congress.gov. It says December 8th, 2020, the safe harbor deadline. The U.S. Code provides that if election results are contested in any state, and if the state prior to election day has enacted procedures to settle controversies or contests over the electors and electoral votes, and if these procedures have been applied and the results have been determined 6 days before the electors' meetings, then these results are considered to be conclusive and will apply in the counting of the electoral votes. Okay, based on my reading of that, let's ask a few questions. They say, if results are contested in any state, all right, question, are there results contested in any state by official governing bodies?
Yeah.
Yes.
It seems like it.
Of course.
There's a lot
an
of hearings
easy yes.
happening now.
I'm just a newbie.
Is it contested?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Michigan, in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, there are active disputes. All right. And it's prior to election day. And if the state, prior to election day, has enacted procedures to settle controversies or contests over electors and electoral votes. Have they? Does that mean general court system? Does that resolve the new complaints that have come up relative to fraud that happened after the fact? See, this is where things get confusing. They say if these procedures have been applied, has anything been applied to rectify complaints about voter fraud from the legislature, especially in Pennsylvania, who have called for an emergency session? Perhaps the argument is, because I'm not a lawyer, the governor has to call a special session because he didn't. There you go. There's no resolution. But now my question is this. What if the Supreme Court is saying, we want your answer by the 9th? Some conservatives are saying Alito set a trap, that if they now have to wait till the 9th to issue their response, maybe they can do it sooner. If they do, then there is a dispute active. The Supreme Court requested a response. Then wouldn't that just basically void those electoral college votes?
That's the question here. Who knows? I mean, Trump really wants this to go to the Supreme Court because he knows he has the advantage there, and he has a lot of prior lawyers that were on the Bush team in the 2000 contested elections as well. That was contested all the way until mid-December. So how is this going to unfold, especially if the votes aren't certified? If this goes to the Supreme Court, who's going to rule what? It's 2020. I think anything could happen at this stage, but it's very hard to predict.
I think it's the fact that the Supreme Court is involved, which makes this questionable, because there's two ways people are reading it. And some people are saying if they're not resolving this dispute and applying nothing to resolve the controversies because they still exist, then they haven't met the deadline and the election's in dispute. But it says, my understanding is, okay, there's a controversy if the state has a way to resolve these before election day, which many of the states do. You go to court, you file lawsuits. And if they've enacted procedures to do such, many of these things have gone to court and they've been thrown out or whatever, then it sounds like it's all resolved. But the Supreme Court steps in and says, this is actually escalating. And if they have to wait till the 9th and the Supreme Court hasn't chosen to accept or dismiss, there's an active controversy in Pennsylvania. How could they then meet that deadline? In fact, it sounds like this actually is bad news for Democrats because there's no way they can resolve it if it's going to Supreme Court. Unless, of course, they sue and argue it's irrelevant what the Supreme Court says to us because the state has already finished this. I'll put it this way. There are legal experts who have said it's not going to happen. It's certified. It's done. There's nothing they can do about it. The Supreme Court has no say, right? The way I put it is you have to understand that these are human beings who can choose to rule and exercise that power. Like the other day when we were talking about the ballot observation in Pennsylvania, a judge actually ruled when Trump's campaign, Giuliani, they were like 682,000 votes were counted with no observer. And the judge is like, were there observers in the room? And Trump's lawyers are like, well, yes, but they didn't have meaningful access. They couldn't look at the ballots. The judge said, well, the election code doesn't say how close you have to be.
That's
therefore
a stupid judge. Yeah. Or they're paid off or something.
Or he's crooked. So and then the left cheers for it. Okay, I'll tell you what. If you're going to cheer for what is obvious to any sane person, a ridiculous ruling, we know what observers are for. There's that, you ever see that photo from Florida where they're like staring at the ballots with the pen and pointing at it? Bush v. Gore. Mm-hmm. They are there to observe.
What the heck?
And make sure that people are counting properly. For a judge to be like, well, they were in the room. The election code doesn't specify distance, so
while
good to go.
Other ones were kicked out and not allowed even in.
Right.
So,
But as long as there's one, that is not what the intent of the law was.
Yeah.
So I tell you, if they can do that, if they can rule that way and the left cheers for it, then I'll tell you this. If the Supreme Court takes this up and then the 4 liberal justices, I include Roberts in that, versus the 5, and the 5 say, we don't care. We're the Supreme Court. Here's our opinion. Boom, it's done. That's it. And they can say, so we got huge news. Look at this. We got a letter. Check this out. It's a huge letter. I think this was posted to, it's being shared around quite a bit. They say 76 members of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. They're basically saying 3 U.S.C. 15 empowers Congress to reject electoral votes that are not regularly given or lawfully certified. The aforementioned conduct has undermined the lawful certification of Pennsylvania's delegation to the Electoral College. For these reasons, we, the undersigned members of the Pennsylvania General Assembly, urge you to object and vote to sustain such objection to the Electoral College votes received from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania during the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021. We have Pennsylvania's state legislator officially now requesting from PA House GOP News. I'm assuming this is legit. We've got all of these people who have signed on to this. If they have submitted this saying straight up, the results are disputed, we object, how is Pennsylvania going to be counted properly on January 6th? You're going to have Republican members of Congress who represent districts in Pennsylvania saying, we have submitted this letter, we reject these votes, deal with it. Is that enough to get Trump to win? No. That puts Biden at 286. They need 2 more states.
Wow.
So check it out. If they get Pennsylvania and Michigan, then Biden's at 270, he wins. If they get Pennsylvania and Georgia, Biden's at 270, he wins. They need 3 states in order to make this happen. It's actually not that hard to do, which is kind of crazy.
It's possible, but it's still a very big uphill battle, and there's a lot of uncertainties, and there's a lot of things that haven't ever happened before. When we saw what happened in 2000, it was between Bush and Gore in one state.
And
one state,
right, and a bunch of different counties doing different things.
Yes, and that was still extremely complicated. This, with all the other states, complicates it tenfold, and now we're set into no man's land where we never were before. There's still a lot of contention. There's even Donald Trump saying that he might not go to the inauguration.
He might hold his own event.
One day he's saying he'll concede. Another day he's saying that he said, quote, if we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be the president. That's an exact quote there. So there's a lot in the air here.
So listen. I've heard a lot from the media that Trump would stage a coup and all this stuff, but the media is hysterical Trump derangement syndrome. So I'll ask you, what do you think the chances are that it's January 19th or whatever, and Trump gives an address where he's like, evidence of Chinese influence and interference. Joe Biden, we've seen the math, we've seen the evidence. He shows the videos, he shows the charts, and then says, I refuse to accept this. And Trump's already got loyalists in key positions, especially in the Pentagon. What do you think the chances are?
Well, he has some loyalists, but if you look at the Trump presidency, it is mirrored in individuals leaking information. And,
definitely.
And backstabbing him and crossing him. And, vice versa. There's a lot of foul play within the establishment against Donald Trump. That's definitely fair.
Yep.
So Donald Trump doesn't have the establishment. He doesn't have a lot of the hardcore Washington, D.C. insiders. He doesn't have the media. He doesn't have social media. He has a couple guys with trucks that ride around with his flag on there, but it's an extremely big uphill battle.
He should have known better, because when he came in, he took the advice of a lot of these crony rhinos.
Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah. You want Sessions for AG. You want Bolton.
He brought out Henry Kissinger. He sat down with Henry Kissinger before he got elected. He congratulated the CIA.
He was like, it was like he was going to play ball with him a little bit.
Exactly.
And then it was knives out, and they were all grinning. And Trump thought that he could come in and say, okay, I'll work with you guys, but we're going to do things my way. They're like, yeah, whatever you say, Trump. And then they unsheathed those blades. And then it took Trump a couple of years to finally be like, I really should have just fired everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.